welcome back to Build Version Lab at DevOps Belgium 2024. My next guest is Lucien. Welcome.
Hello, welcome. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And so, Lucien, you mentioned that your topic that you talk about and you generally like concerned about is collaboration.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
collaboration is it's a huge topic, obviously. And I don't think if you ask anyone, they will tell you, "Oh no, collaboration is good, is not good." It's everybody are on board with the idea of that the collaboration is great and everything. But in
Absolutely.
reality, it's not really that simple, right?
No.
And that's because maybe the way we do stuff is not naturally promoting collaboration.
Yeah, I think you got a really good point there.
Right? So first of all, why? Why is that? And second, obviously, how do we fix that? And you know, before that, do we really need to fix it? And then how do we fix it?
Well, of course, what I've always been taught is that the answer is it depends. It depends on what kind of team you are, what kind of product you're building. If you're building something for a small community, just for yourself, or if you're working at a large multinational, building stuff that literally millions of people use, that are different use cases for collaboration. But in the end, what I've seen in my career is that people like, well, a lot of people that walk around here like to get their hands dirty, like to start programming as soon as they can, and fix things along the way. And that works if you're just working with yourself. But as soon as you're in a team, you need to start communicating. You need to start collaborating with your team member regarding what are we building? And are we, the thing that we're focusing on right now, is that also ready for the future? Or are we over abstracting stuff and making sure that things are ready for the future that will never happen?
But let me be a devil's advocate here
Sure.
for a second and
Of course.
tell you, okay, what you want is to fill my life with soul-sucking meetings all day. And while we talk about old stuff, and especially for the future and planning for the future, what we don't do is we don't actually write code that might actually be in the future. Because if all we do is meetings, nothing happens.
No, that's completely true. And that's also not what I'm advocating. But what I am advocating is looking at your APIs. So you have your system or your component or your specific part of whatever you're doing, and you have your input and output towards other people, right? And that's called the API, the programmer interface. And if you focus on describing the API first, then you can start programming the way you want, the way it suits you best, but you still have a common understanding of how you communicate to a different system or to a different component, for example.
I love it. I love it because it also might win over some of the people that really don't like meetings and collaboration when you present it in a way that, hey, this is your API. I mean, you know the importance of API in software. There is also important of API in people.
Yes.
Right. But then the problem is, and with software and with computers, we have this wonderful thing of short, predictable, and reliable feedback. And this is why when we write code and we define the APIs, we know exactly how the APIs and collaboration between different components work.
Exactly.
With people,
no,
it's definitely
not so much. No.
Not so much.
And that's because our APIs are very complex, right? The English language is full of exceptions that you need to take care of. Or, well, we have a baseline. I think that for the both of us, English is not our native language, but we can still communicate because we have learned the API of the English language. And I'm not saying that you should stop programming. I say that you should start with defining the API, make sure people understand each other on the base level, and then you can start with your amazing application while you adhere to that API. And you get a bonus. I think you get a real good bonus, and that is if you use an API or an API form that has been around for a long time, you get a lot of tools to help you out for free. Testing tools, right? Whoever wants to write a test. But if you have written down your API and you follow, for example, the Open API spec, you get API testing for free, contract testing. You don't have to do anything about it. You actually can generate code that you don't want to write over and over again. You're not adding new value to an application if you write a new fetch command. We've done that millions of times. Don't bother writing them yourselves. But what you want is, and what you can get by using standards is an SDK in your preferred language that helps you prevent issues that you could make otherwise.
This is very cool.
Why aren't we doing it all yet?
Yeah,
I don't know.
So that's a good question. So obviously, again, everybody understands the importance of API, right? But I think for a lot of people, API is an afterthought, right? It's like, okay, I have my application, and now I need to expose an API so others can integrate with it.
Yeah.
But there is a value in my application even without API because it has a UI, it has a mobile app, it has some kind of front end.
Yes.
So API is a nice to have addition, but it's not something that is a core of my application.
Yes and no. Because you mentioned that you have a mobile and a web front end, for example. Those tend to use APIs as well. So you have the external API for third parties to integrate with, if you have such an application. But you might also have your internal APIs. The front-end team communicating to a back-end team, a service communicating to another service, while both of them are completely within your control. Those are still APIs. Those are still things that you can discuss first and write later.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So how should we approach writing software with that in mind? What should change?
Well, for those who are here today or can view it, I think that you can also view it on YouTube afterwards. My talk is specifically about a part where APIs aren't used that much at the moment, which is UI components. Who the hell thinks about an API when you're describing your UI component? That's mostly within the same team. Well, mostly, but not always. And we've seen multiple teams that are already working on creating, for example, a UI component library for other people to use. Well, instead of only delivering those components, also deliver your API so that people can understand what it's about. So depending on your use case, I would say the thing that needs to change is that we need to think about our communication first before we implement it, no matter where you're programming.
And there is a pattern that advocates that, which is
design first.
Design first.
Exactly.
Right. And how do we start? What tools can we use to make it intuitive to us and change our learned inclination of starting with implementation instead?
Yeah. Well, this really depends on what type of API we're discussing. So, for example, for most people could be familiar with stuff like Swagger, OpenAPI, GraphQL, tRPC, so the inter-system communications. There are a lot of tools for those languages, so to speak, that are already available for you to start with, so that you don't have to write those, tedious contracts yourself. Because a lot of the times, what's written in the contracts is also already been done over and over again. There's no need to write your CRUD definition because somebody already did that, right? So there's tooling for that for you to help. My talk, like I've said, is about UI components, and the thing that I'm introducing there is the custom elements manifest, which is the standard to describe a web component. And I probably will see someone with a coming after me yelling, no, you need to write React code, that's better. Fine, let's discuss afterwards. In my opinion, in 2024, and you're writing a UI component library, that shouldn't involve a framework, only web components. That's my hot take, and I'll be here all day.
Nice. Lucien, thank you very much.
Right,
It was
thank you.
very, very interesting, and we learned a lot. And so thank you. Thanks
Right.
a lot.
Thanks for having me.
And you folks, stay tuned for more episodes of the Build Proportion Lab coming you soon. Bye bye.